Hello and welcome to Flory Models. For this particular build we're going to be tackling Airfix's brand new tooled 1/72 Vulcan bomber. Now I thought I better do this as a bit of a free to air view, as a bit of a thank you to Airfix. Obviously they've given me this kit, which is very nice of them, but also I've been nagging them for the last 2 decades about giving us a brand new high fidelity, if you like, a Vulcan bomber, recessed panel lines, all the gorgeous detail into it, and finally we got it. So this is going to be a free to watch build. You'll be able to follow along through social media and things like that for the entire length of this build, and obviously through to the painting and weathering stage at the end of it as well. Remember, if you want to see all the other video builds, please pop over to the Flory Models site and you can see them all down in there and everything else that we get up to. So let's get on with it. Okay, so as always, beginning of build, we've had a good look through the instructions, and we've had a look for the usual things like different variants and stuff like that we have to look out for. To be honest, this particular build, we're going to be doing it straight out of the box. I'm sure the aftermarket people will be on this with various things for it, but to be honest with you, there's not a lot of point doing the cockpit because let's face it, you can't really see it. And then obviously the two options you get, full bomb load or obviously with the blue steel missile, they're both great options, and there's lots of aftermarket decals out there, as you might imagine. Okay, so looking down at the instructions, they're pretty much straightforward, no problem at all. I've already taken most of these parts off the sprues for us to actually do the cleanup work and stuff like that. It's made our way through. The way I'm looking at this is how it's going to be going together. Obviously it's a little bit modular. We've got the front end connects to the main fuselage, so forth and so on. But the main thing is, because we're not going to see so much in the actual cockpit, what I'm thinking is that we just put it all together that way. From a build point of view, you can see how it goes together and how it actually goes. And then what we'll do is actually pick out all the details and things like that by hand afterwards. Again, if this was any other type of build, I would probably paint all the parts, the seats, the instrument panels, flight deck, things like that, separate, bring them together for painting and weathering. But because, to be honest, we're not going to see any of it, there really is not a lot of point. So down in front of us, we've got the various parts here. I've just got the last ones to sort of, you know, tidy up and clean up now, which is the little rudder pedals, which I thought we'd talk about these because, let's face it, why? But, you know, we are actually building it. We're never going to see it, but they still got to be cleaned up and taken care of, so they're nice clean joins and things like that. Okay, so we just do with these. Okay, so that's pretty nice. So as it starts down in here, we've actually got the bottom of the flight deck itself. Okay, so basically we've got this type of situation where we're just going to come along and we're going to pop these all in. All right, so feet obviously to the outside are going to fit in, and then obviously we've got a tab to the rear, as you can see. Pretty normal type stuff, so that's just going to fit in here, and this is going to make up our nose wheel well. Okay, for this one, to be honest, I'm just using Tamiya's Quickset cement, and again, all looks pretty good so far. So as always with all your fitting, test it first. So when we say about testing, we're just on about dry fitting, so we're just making sure the parts all fit in there before you commit to glue. All right, so these are all looking absolutely fine, so we're just going to come along with these. Going to pop a little bit of glue just down in there. There's a little bit of a bend out here at the back, so great thing with Quickset, you just hold it, wait a couple of moments, and it'll be enough to hold it in place. And then if you wanted to, like here, we're just going to add a little bit more glue, and remember, we don't tend to brush, we tend to just touch and flow. Okay, so that's in there just like that. All right, so that's the wheel well section put in there. Flipping it over, we then have got the center type console. All right, so that's just going to fit in like that, and it is a little bit standing. Again, nothing wrong with that. A couple of little bits of glue just to hold that in place. All right, next up we've got these rudder pedals. So the rudder pedals are going to just fit in this little slot here. So it is like a key system, the way that this fits in. So what you want to do is have the feet to the bottom, just like this, so that way it just comes in here. Give it a little bit of a nudge forward, touches in place, and then again touch. And we're going to go touch, and we're going to go touch. Okay, so that's all in there just like that. So that gives us our rudder pedals down in there. Then we've got the first of the bulkheads going on. So we've got the lead bulkhead. So again, this one's just going to fit in, and I have to say, I'm happy to report this is all very nice. It fits perfectly. So far so good. Okay, so that's all in there, starting to take shape already. All right, so we can just place that out the way just for a second. All right, so next up we've actually got the flight deck, which I haven't got out. of all the parts I haven't got ready. This is the one. So we're just going to come down in here. I'm just going to snip this one. Now this actually has a decal which fits on to put this in. So what we'll do is we'll get everything on this painted and built up and everything, and then we're just going to come back with the decals afterwards. Okay, so again we'll just do the cleanup. And again, when you're doing your cleanup, don't take too much away, because obviously if you take too much, you end up having to put stuff back in. So on the back side, as you can see, just down in here, we've got these little feet areas that we're just going to grab set tweezers. All right, so what we're going to do is going to pop a little bit of glue in each one. This is just so the capillary action will grab it. Okay, so this is going to come under here. I don't have my finger in the way, that fit a lot nicer. That's the first one in. And then coming in with the second. And that just like that. So that gives you control sticks in there like that. All right, so again, normally you pop the decal on there, but I'm pretty sure we can put the decal in afterwards. Okay, so that should be quite straightforward. It's not going to take long to dry. Okay, but for the moment what we can actually do is then fit it onto here. So actually what you've got a situation is this little guy here is going to fit down onto. So literally we can just come in with a pair of tweezers. Going to come in and it's going to fit the back on there. It's actually quite a nice fit as well. So what we're going to do, just seat it down in there, touch underneath, touch to the rear, and then we can seat it correctly. And again, we want it to be the right angle so it fits in there just like that. Okay. Nice and straightforward so far. Next up, we've got the seats. Quite straightforward on these, so it should have literally just got two halves going together. So what we'll do, just run a little bit up there. Okay, so we've got both halves together. We'll just run a little bit more glue up through the middle, just like that. And again, if you wanted to, you could put the two halves together first, hold them in, and then glue from when it's together. Always give them a little bit of wiggle room and then squeeze. Okay, so that allows the glue to flow right the way through to the back. Okay, so that's those done just like that. And then technically you put the actual seats on. To be honest, we're going to do those separate. So we'll paint everything up, and then when we do things like the seat cushions and the instrument panel, things like that, we will pop those in there just like that. Okay, so that completes the early stages of it just down in here. And if we flip this over, we can see about these. So because everything literally is all painted in one on this, it's very, very straightforward. Okay, so again, what we can actually do, we've got various decals and things like that, which are going to go down and put the details down in here. All right, but you can see very straightforward so far. So actually what we can do is then we can work on these. Again, it's going to have decals put on there, but we'll do it all once it's painted. So the seats we won't put in yet, we'll pop them in afterwards. All right, so we've got the actual oxygen bottles, which are going to go to the rear. Again, because the holders are painted, these are the left and rights. So there is a difference on the left and right. You'll know it won't go in because it won't seat correctly. Okay, and then again, once we've got one in, we know the other one should be fine. So hoses to the outsides, and they're going to fit at the back just like that. Pretty straightforward again, nicely done. Okay, then we've actually got these side consoles, and these are then going to fit into here and are going to come over. So we're just wondering, that's it, they're going to fit in these slots down in here, and then once we're in, we'll taper those to the right angles. So we got one and we got two. And we are hopeful that these will angle in to the right angles once these have all been pushed in. Again, interesting way of doing it. But there we go, that's those in, and then once they're in we'll do the floors, and we can do it up against that bulkhead. And then again, same on this side. Okay, and then touch, touch. And again, if you wanted to, you could be a bit snazzy with the old tweezers. Okay, and then again, what we'll do, we'll just do the glue around the outside because it will just give it a little bit more strength. And again, although this is quick set glue, don't think it's going to be instant grab because it's clearly not. Okay, so that's those on there like that. Again, we've got the rear ladder. So the ladder itself is going to hook. As you can see, mine, I thought it was supposed to be like that, but it clearly isn't. So this is where we're going to have a little bit of trouble here. It's my first bent part. Okay, so this actually came off the sprue like that, but clearly it should be straight. So what we're going to do is very gently, we're just going to push it down to try and straighten this out just a little bit, and we can use tweezers for the job. Okay, so if you use tweezers, you'll spread the load for straightening it out. Once it's done, you should be not too bad with it at all. Okay, so it's still a little bit in there, so it's going to need just a little bit more fettling, as I call it. And then once you've got it somewhat straight, what I would suggest is re-gluing it. So re-gluing it will soften, almost temper the plastic, and then once it goes off, it will then put it back into place. Okay, it will strengthen it in that place. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. So what we'll try now is to put this in. So if we put a little bit of glue on the top, this then will go down, and then hopefully we can glue this into the up position. And again, there's no actual proper location for it, it is just here. Okay, so that's in there. And again, we can go down and we can paint the side, the yellow handles on that. But to be honest, we might even use pens for a quick fix on that one, but that's very straightforward down in there, just like that. Okay, so that's those ones down in there. And again, we've got the rear seats here as well, but the rear seats, what we'll do is we'll paint those, because again, we can give them a little bit of a dry brush. We're never going to see them, no one's going to see these ever existed and everything else, but we know they're there. Okay, so we'll do the seats, the various bits and pieces separately, but if you wanted to, now this is dried a little bit, you could put these in as a soft fit just to check your alignments and make sure everything's okay. Okay, so the seats will go in there temporarily whilst we're doing everything else. Okay, but again, we're going to paint these separately, and again, it's got seam lines and various things that normally you would take care of, but to be honest, we really don't need to do it on this one. So we've got the seats going in the back here shortly and everything else, but what we can actually do is put on the rear deck, which is this one just down in here, which I've got to remember now which way around this goes. Does it bend inwards? It does, it bends inward. Okay, so that will literally come in and fit in like that. It's a beautiful fit, a very nice, good, solid fit. So actually what we can do is leave it without putting any glue till we got the seats all in there. But there we go, that's the first stage of the cockpit section done, which really runs us straight down into here. Okay, so this will get you as far as you want to do. What you could do is mark your paperwork, put on your instructions, things just to remind you to do things like the decals have got to go back in, stuff like that. So what you can do is grab yourself a pen. It's a little trick that I often do, and it's just to remind me that I need to fit that back in there just like that. Okay, with side ones you probably know that are going to need to be done, but you know, you never know, you might forget these things. But anywhere else where you think a little bit of detail you might overlook, just mark it on your paperwork and it will keep it all abreast. Okay, this is quite a nice touch. Again, does it need it? I don't know, but you've got a little cup here for fitting the nose weight, which is 40 grams, so it's quite a bit of weight you're going to need to put in there. I tend to use lead sheet, but if you're using lead shot, that's ideal. Okay, so you can just fill up that little cup with your lead shot, you can then glue it on there in the fear that you know it's not going to be leaking and going out everywhere just like that. Okay, then obviously moving down in here, we've got a few little things to decide on. Obviously we've got the different type of nose, got the refueling probe, or if you've got the normal one. Okay, so if you want to go for that one, depending on your nose, how that's going to come in. And again, are you going to be doing it gear down with the access door open, or are you going to be doing it perhaps in flight, something else like that? You're going to have to make these choices now, because you need to sort all of those things out. So what we're going to do, let those bits totally dry for a moment. We'll prepare, get these bits all cut out, sanded, cleaned up, everything else like that. And then we can think about actually getting this section all painted up. It's totally separate, so it won't hurt it. So we go in there, get that all base coated and everything right the way through. Then we can do the colouring of the seats, pick out hand details, things like that. Decal, so in a minute we'll get the decals all sorted for the instrument panels and get those all in place, all ready. So when we put the two halves around it, it's all done and dusted and we can move on to the next section. Okay, so as you can see, we've been in the spray booth and we have painted black in here. So this is just Tamiya's XF85 rubber black down in. We've done a little bit of hand painting as well. Literally, we've just done the ladders and all these bits, all this stuff you'll never see. All right, but again, it's good practice when you're doing your model, even if you're not going to see any of it, to practice some of your skills on this. So what I'm going to do is a very simple weathering job on this. We are literally just going to dry brush it with a little bit of a sort of a medium grey. So for this, I'm going to use Tamiya's XF54. Normally I'd use oils, but just for speed and because really not going to see it, we're going to give it a dry brush everywhere. This is just to highlight the edges, to give that effect of wear and tear. Again, on the smaller scales, if you're doing it in 70-second scale, you don't really want to use silver. Silvers are so in your face and bright. Obviously in 48th, 32nd, 35th, you can get away with it and you can actually use it to have more of a proper worn look. But because of the scale effects, we want to keep it quite subtle and we don't want it jumping in your face too much. So what we got here is we're going to dry brush this on neat. Okay, so usual thing, we just got a paper towel, a bit of kitchen roll, load up a brush. Okay, so we're just going to load up the brush. And again, the whole point of dry brushing is it's a gradual effect. You want to build it up slowly. If it goes on too quick, what can happen is you end up with big heavy areas and you want it to be nice and subtle and come along. So what I would advise is start on areas you don't even see. So we're just going to start it down in here because you might see we've got these little areas that appear. That won't happen a little bit later on. So we're just going to go in here. This will just weather the inside of the actual cockpit again that we are not going to see, but hey, it's a good way of just starting off your dry brushing. Then once you've done that, you can move over to your actual item itself. Okay, so down in here again, we'll start down here at the back, and again, don't forget it's a gradual process. So we start off going one direction, then we go the other, then we're just going to do the ladder and we're going to go right over these tanks on these edges. And again, what this will do, it will turn the black to a more realistic lifelike black. So automatically it just sort of knocks it back a little bit. And instead of it being flat black like here, by the time we've been along on this, you'll notice it sort of just comes into a more worn black that we're probably more used to seeing inside cockpits and things like that. Okay, so not only does it work as in just highlighting areas and corners and things, but also it just looks like wear and tear and dust and grime that may build up. Okay, so we're just coming in from both sides and directions and on the outside all round in here, and there's our cockpit all weathered up and ready for decaling. Okay, not forgetting to do the other areas. So we've got this area down here at the back, so there's a couple of little things. So on this edge we can just go in. And again, we're just adding a little bit of three-dimensional type of wear and tear to it. Okay, same time we're doing those, we've got the seats all done, so we've painted up these, a real basic job. And then again, these are still probably a little bit wet for doing this because I've literally only done it a few moments ago. But we can dry brush over the harnesses and the seats and everything just to give a more warning look. And you can see how it just keeps giving. The brush will just keep giving and giving and giving. Okay, so it's still a little bit wet down there on the bottom, so we have to be careful. But again, on these seats, because they're black, anywhere that's black will really show just very nicely. Okay, so we're going to come along on these and on the seats, and again, we're not going to see a single bit of this, but you know it's been done. Okay, so that's all of those, and then just the last one over on here, and you can see we did all of that on one brushful, so to speak. Okay, now normally if we were doing any other type of model that you could see in, then I would probably come in and we would do a little bit of dry brushing and various things with different colours perhaps actually do come in with some metals. Then we're going to come in with washes, and we'll use washes into this one to all give that nice three-dimensional look. But again, we're not really going to see it in here, so there's not a lot of point going over the board with it all. Again, a bit like the interior details. Now I'm sure the aftermarket guys will be all over this like a rash, but from our point of view, we are literally just going to use the kit decals. So we just cut them off like this, and then we'll just nip off the bit that says common and all the rest of it. Okay, and then from my point of view, all we're going to do, just going to grab a bit of water down on the cutting mat. Okay, decals face down in, and we can clear up those whilst these are soaking off. Okay, we're going to grab a couple of cleanish brushes, he says. We can find one, that'll do. Alright, and then we're going to place the decals on here. So on the instructions, literally this is what we're doing. So we've got one for the centre, down in here, and then obviously we've got these other ones going on the sides, and obviously the instrument panel, things like that, as it goes right the way through. I don't know if there's one on the rear. I don't think there is one to the rear. I don't think so. So again, not much going on down the back there, so that's soaking nicely. So what we're going to do is flip it over. Okay, and as you can see, they're all released already, which didn't take long at all, so that's always a good sign of they're fresh out. Okay, so then what we'll do, just grab my magnifiers so I can see. Okay, so as always, we'll start with the tricky one. So we're going to do the center panel. So just a little bit of water on these consoles, and it just helps them slip a little bit better to make their way around. Okay, then we're going to chase the decal. So I don't remember which way this one goes up. Okay, so this one is, just make sure we have got the right way around. That one goes in there. And so it's the whiter area to the rear. Okay, so we've got quite a bit of water on there, so we'll just knock off all the water, soak it up through the brush, and then again you can use a knife or a pair of tweezers or whatever you want to do just to position these. To get them in there, just like that. Usual thing, cotton bud, squish down, get the water all out, and then we'll put on a setting solution onto this one. Okay, then we've got, which one are we next, I think? Make sure we've got the right one. So this is the one with the black dial to the front. Edge dials goes over there, okay. So actually this one needs to go around on here. And again, just going to nudge all into place so the dial goes to the top, just in there like that. And then again, just grab the other one. So positioning him, and the nice thing with these is that we don't have to worry about it butting up against anything else, but we want to make sure these sides are in, because otherwise it will scroll it all up down in there. Okay, so that again, we'll just, and to be honest with you, the decals are a little bit simplistic, shall we say, but like we're going to be probably saying all the way through this, it doesn't matter because you're not going to see any of this. Reason we have huge long fibers. Okay, so that one's in, and then last up we've obviously got the instrument panel or the IP, so we're just going to grab that one, and then again we're just going to lay that over the top, and then we'll just pull him down around the control sticks. So again, it's basic, but yeah, nothing you would technically want to show off, but Again, showing off is something that's not going to happen here. All right, so we got that one down in there. So what we're going to do is just going to grab a little bit of setting solution. So for this, we've got a little bit of micro sol. Okay. And then we'll just clean our brush off. Use the same brush. Okay, down one side, down the other. And again, just make sure you go right over the edges of it so it can, one, get away, but also it can get under. So you want the setting solutions to actually go under. So if it moves like that, don't worry about it. We'll just slide him back into position. Just like that. Okay, so with that in there, we're going to leave that now just around about half an hour just to start to dry off and do its bit. Okay, just make sure we have got all our decals, and it looks like there is one left down there, and I'm just wondering what that one is for. Okay, and do we see it anywhere else? Okay, so this decal down in here, which is number 3A, you are never going to see ever, because technically it goes on the roof of the canopy. So if you wanted to, you could keep it. From our point of view, we probably won't. Okay, so that's out the way. Let's clean that off. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on those decals just to make sure that they do bed down properly. Okay, and actually do go in there. What we can start to do is just come along with the rest of the seats and the various things, and we can start to put these into position as it is all drying. Okay, which will then finish off the cockpit area. So what we've got is two rearward facing seats. And again, taking my chance here because I've literally only painted these just before we started filming. So these are like swivel chairs. So they're going to sit on top in there, literally just like that. So what we'll do is we just grab a little bit of this, that go underneath. The rest of them we'll do from the top. Okay. So that's the two seats just in the rears like that one. And then obviously we've got this guy as well, and he is going to stand in the little holes to each side. So what we'll do, we'll just tiny little bit of glue and say this is the quick set, so you don't want to take too much time on this. It needs to go in. Okay, so that's our three to the rear, and again we don't have any details back in here at all, so that can go on. And then again we'll just glue from this side, let the capillary action zip in and do its bit, making sure that's all pushed in there nice and tight. And there we go, that's our cockpit area done, just like that, looking nice. Okay, and then last up, we've just got these seats to go in. So again, we can just remove these from their backing, and hopefully these will just sit in. I think what we can do, just push him in. And again, you could use a little bit of glue on this, but I don't think it needs it. Wing. In there, just like that. And then these little guys, again, I think we'll just pre-glue the area. There's one. Two. And there we go. That's our crew seats in. All done, set, and to be honest, ready to go. Have to say, first stage of that, really very, very nice. Goes together, no problem at all, no fit issues whatsoever. A couple of things to talk about though. One is these little windows here. They are tiny, minuscule. Obviously, if you needed to, you can put the clear part in there now. I'm going to do the PVA glue trick. It'll work perfectly on a hole that size. So basically pop a little bit of PVA glue in there, crystal clear in our case, and it will be crystal clear. And it saves a lot of messing around, because what we can do is just bung in a little bit of foam in there just to cover that before we go in. But this will then fit in very, very nicely, we hope, just down in here. So that will come in and it will fit in there just like that. Okay, the nose section, to be honest, that we have put together and we put in, I've measured out the weight. It's saying on here for 40 grams. So 40 grams is quite a bit. Okay, so we just grab these and we're just going to cut this up. So I've weighed this out and it's just over 40 grams. So we're just going to cut this into strips and we can just pop it in here just like this. And if you need to, you can come in whichever way. Okay, so top and bottom, I think we're just going to come in here. And again, you've got options. You could PVA glue it just down in there. You could super glue it, whichever way. If you're using super glue and kicker, do not put it in your model until it's totally dry, because otherwise it can cause you lots of trouble. So we're just going to pop in a little bit of super glue just around the areas, and we'll let this just find its way down and in. Okay, and again, if you've probably better off if you're going to do a little bit of shot. So if you put a lead shot into it, PVA glue it all into place. Purely otherwise it's going to rattle when it's off. Now again, if you're doing this in flight, you don't want to put any nose weight into it because you're just adding weight to the stand. But obviously we're going to have ours on gear, so we are going to add a little bit of weight just down in there like that. And then of course I will come along with a little bit of PVA glue, because I never trust what these will do. Okay. So we just let that come down, and we're just going to put a little dollop right on the top and let it soak around and in. Let the sort of capillary action do its bit. So we're just going to let this go down, and then hopefully it will hit the bottom. Once it does, we'll turn it around the other way. And then what this does is, if the super glue at any point decides to give up, which it shouldn't do because it's not in the light, it's ultraviolet light that kills super glue, and then this will work really well at just sealing this completely in place. So again, just a cheap PVA glue. Wouldn't use your crystal clear on this because it's a bit too much of a nicer job for this. Okay, so we just let this come along, and obviously we don't want it to run off the top. And the other thing as well is that we don't want to glue this technically in place until we are completely happy of how it is, because otherwise what's going to happen, this won't dry out properly, or it will, but it'll take absolute eons. All right, so this way it can just dry off naturally over the course of a couple of hours, just like this. All right, so there it is in there. And we'll leave that off to one side to do its bit, but we know this all fits in. The only thing is this little guy that goes on the bottom, which is in part 20, talks about obviously hatch if you're going to be having it open or closed. All right, so this is this section here. So obviously we're going to have ours with the boarding ladder down, but this bit of glass is important. That's something I don't think we can do with the PVA trick. Okay, so what we want to do is obviously install that before we put this lower section in right the way in this one. So this is where we're to, up in here, as you can see. So 40 grams going to be going in. We glue it on the front, the two halves come together. Okay, and we put it in. This is that window we're talking about, J05. We're not worried about him because we're going to PVA glue it. And as for this little guy on the top area, it's a sealed unit, but again, I'm always a little bit worried about dust. If you're doing any sanding work and filling especially, the dust from that can go inside your cockpit, and there's nothing worse when you're unmask your model, you've got dust in there. So if you can't get a compressor in there and blow it out or wash it out, and this will be a bit tricky to do because there's a lot going on in here, that you're better off putting the clear part on last. So that's actually what we're going to do. We'll tack it into place and then we'll fix it properly once we're happy with the build. And to be honest, there's a seam line that runs right the way around the canopy, so that'll work in our favour. It hasn't got to be seamless as you might expect. Okay, so anyway, that's the cockpit done. What we're going to do now is, whilst we're waiting for that to dry, we'll get all the parts cut out now for the actual wing area, which takes us over here to section 22, so we can actually get all these parts all laid out and we start putting them together whilst we're waiting for that to dry.